Hi everyone, my name's Nick, and today we're going to discuss houseplants that used to be inexpensive that are now expensive. So this is the exact opposite of a very recent video I did where I talked about inexpensive houseplants that used to be expensive, so hopefully you're still with me here. But unfortunately the market does work in both ways, so these are all plants I'm going to be talking about today that unfortunately cost a lot of money. And I do want to have a little disclaimer, I do possess all the plants and will be showing you them today, but I am not wealthy. I have grown pretty much all of these plants for a couple of years now, and when I got my hands on them, they were not nearly the price that they cost now. And I will touch on how much these plants costed when I had first gotten my hands on them. So we will talk about all of this stuff, don't you worry. But I think it'll be most appropriate to start out with this one right here. So this is the Pink Princess Philodendron. Philodendron ERUBESCENS, pink princess they call it. And this is like one of the hottest houseplants out there. And this is one, when I first started getting into houseplants, that was very inexpensive. I had first purchased my pink princess philodendron, and I believe I have a YouTube video on this, but one of my first YouTube videos that I ever did. But I purchased this plant. This is a cutting off of the main plant that I have behind me here, which I've been growing for 3 years at this point, and I purchased it for $8 online in a 4-inch pot, and that is not what they cost nowadays. When I was working at the houseplant store, I was selling pink princess philodendrons for $1.25. Mind you, I think that was actually below our markup that we had, our standard houseplant markup, and it was just an astronomical price. I couldn't believe that people were coming into the store every weekend lining up to purchase a 4-inch pot of pink princess philodendron for $125 when just a couple years prior I had just purchased one because I thought it looked cool, didn't even know about the plant, for $8. So something that kind of boggles my mind, and some of the other people who are in the buying industry that I talk to are also, it's kind of hard for us to wrap our mind around it, but it's just such a popular plant, and it was so hard to get your hands on for so long, and now it's finally being mass produced. So there's other plants like the Rhaphidophora tetrasperma, which you can see part of it behind me. I know it's probably not the best part of my plant that's showing right here, but plants like this become mass produced and used to be very expensive, but now are everywhere and they cost dirt cheap. Versus plants like this, which the people who dictate the market, they know that this pink princess philodendron is a plant that's been highly sought after for many years. It's just like the variegated monstera. I'm sure when this thing comes out, although this one is not going to be on the list today because I don't think it was ever inexpensive, but this is one that once it's mass produced, once again, I don't really see the price falling at first. You know, we can't say what's going to happen years down the line, but this is one that I had first heard probably about a year and a half ago that this was being mass produced the same way that the Rhaphidophora is being produced by it's a process called tissue culture. So all of the pink princesses that are sold on the market now are from tissue culture. So it's just like that, and it's able to be mass produced. But like I was saying, the people who dictate the market know that the pink princess is highly sought after, so they still charge a lot of money for a wholesale. It's not like the Rhaphidophora, which costs basically the same amount that it would cost for a golden pothos. It's not like that at all. Pink Princess is still top dollar. They are holding on to them. They are making them as hard to get as they can to keep this plant trend going. I would have a hard time getting like more than 5 released to me when I was a buyer because they don't want you to have a lot because then it's going to be readily available. And maybe the price will then start to lower because everybody can get their hands on it. So it is a plant that is 100% being mass produced, and if you play your cards right, you can get it, but it's just still they're like manipulating the market, it seems, to make this plant still expensive. So this is just a cutting right here. It's a very easy plant to grow, mind you. I've been growing this for 3 years now, and it's grown phenomenally for me. I've taken multiple cuttings. This is one cutting right here that I'm growing that I'm excited to pot up because you can see it's rooted quite nicely in this jar full of leca, or clay pebbles. And my plant is already regrowing a nice leaf. So it's a very incredible houseplant, and if you do shell out the money on it nowadays, I want you to feel confident that it's going to grow well for you. But at the same time, maybe you gotta think a little harder about, are you willing to spend that much money? And is it that important that you spend a large amount of money on a plant that is just like, once you have it, you have it, but you could also probably trade for it, you know what I mean? So just a lot of things to think about. I don't love the way the houseplant market is going, specifically in this direction. I liked it when the plants that used to be expensive are now inexpensive, but it's kind of a shame when this plant that I purchased a couple years ago for $8 measly is now selling for over $100 for half of the plant that I had purchased. But I'm just rambling at this point. I have plenty of other plants to talk about in this video, but I just think this pink princess philodendron is like the most relevant one, and the one that I think everyone is thinking is when it comes to expensive plants or hot plants. Everyone thinks about the pink princess philodendron, or they think about the variegated monstera. So one that I absolutely had to talk about today. Okay, so let's talk about this one as well, because I think this kind of fits in, because this is a string of hearts right here, Ceropegia woodii, and I believe in the same exact video that I purchased my pink princess philodendron from many years ago, well, not many, 3 years ago, which is many years ago for me. I think I purchased this as well. I think I purchased a string of hearts, so I think I got a pink princess and a string of hearts, and maybe there was something else I purchased in that video. It's not relevant anymore. It's been a couple of years, but what I'm trying to get across is I also purchased the string of hearts for dirt cheap. I think my string of hearts actually costed more than the pink princess. I think it was like $10 for a hanging basket, which nowadays, when I would, as a buyer at the houseplant store, they did not cost $10 wholesale. They costed, oh, I guess I can talk about this stuff freely now because I don't really work there. They costed about $15 wholesale, so it was more than I was expecting, you know what I mean? And the prices, it was creeping up. So like when I first started selling string of hearts at the shop, I think I was able to get like little pots, and they costed no more than like $2 for a 2-inch pot. Like it was cheap, but you know, plant trends catch on, and you know, things sell out as people start to catch on to trends, and you know, the manufacturers realize that their plants might be worth a little bit more money than they thought they were. So then the prices start to creep up. And it's kind of a shame with a plant like this string of hearts that's such a fast grower, and you can just like produce this like wildfire, I would say, but the price still once again seems to be creeping up, which is just a shame. But there's nothing I can do about it as an individual, you know what I mean? I can just bring light to it here on my channel and use my platform to make sure people are spending their money appropriately, because I know we all want these plants. Like I know we all want these plants, but if you're buying a hanging basket of string of hearts for 45 bucks, like that's not really like ideal. The plant market, like I said, it moves in both directions. So some plants can really just cost way more than they should, and I just, you know, we should dictate the market, you know what I mean? How much are we willing to pay for plants? Are you willing to pay that much? Because if you're willing to pay that much for it, they might start to charge more for it. So maybe the pink princess is only going to become more expensive because people are so willing to pay $125 for it. At least at the store where I work, that's how much I charge for it, but some stores might be charging even more for that. Okay, so let's move on to a little bit more generic one, let's say. So this is a Calathea, or a prayer plant. I'm sorry, this is such a rowdy Calathea. This is just the one I felt was most appropriate to talk about today. So this is just a standard Calathea. And no, this is not going to cost you $100 like the pink princess costs. But I really wanted to talk about this today because it's something I've noticed as somebody who used to work in the industry. Prices creeping up over time. I'm pretty sure when I first started buying houseplants for the store that I worked at, that Calatheas were no more than $3. Like if there was like a rare or hard to find Calathea, it might be like $3.50. But nowadays, when I stopped buying at the plant store most recently, when I was buying Calatheas, they were selling for, or wholesale for like $6, sometimes even $7, depending on the variety. That's a big jump compared to less than $3 just within the last 2 years. It's like plants like golden pothos and syndapsis are still staying at that base price point because they're still so standard, I guess. But for some reason, plants like Calathea just seem to be creeping up in price. So, you know, I've been going around to local plant stores and seeing them selling the Calatheas for what used to be like $10, $12 now for like upwards of $15, $18, even $20 for a 4-inch pot, just because the prices are just trickling upwards. And I don't know if things trickle upwards, but they're moving upwards, and it's not great. So yeah, if you're wondering why Calatheas are a little bit more expensive nowadays, that could be why. Like I said, it's not going to be astronomical prices. It's just about double than what it used to be, which is kind of a shame. Now, can you walk into a plant store and find Calathea super cheap? Absolutely. I'm sure that there are plant stores where you can find a Calathea for less than $10. And mind you, maybe they're growing it themselves. But a lot of small plant stores buy in, and when you buy in specifically from whether it's a larger company or a smaller company, the prices are going to fluctuate and change. So the companies that I purchase from, the prices were going up. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's happening for other people too. And while we're on this topic, another type of plant that the price has really been creeping up, just kind of in general, is Hoyas. So once again, when I first started buying Hoyas, for the plant store where I worked, they were same price as golden pothos. Like I think they would be like $2.50, $2.90, maybe $3 maximum for a wholesale 4-inch Hoya carnosa or pubicalyx. Now, can you still get a Hoya carnosa and a pubicalyx for less than $20 in a 4-inch pot? Absolutely. Specifically, carnosa I don't think would be higher than $15 at most plant stores. But the prices are still creeping up, similar to the Calatheas. I think that they are around like $6 at many of the people that I was purchasing from. Mind you, I'm sure there's other people who are buying houseplants for stores watching this video who are like, what? Like, the people who I'm buying from, it's not the case, but that was the case for me in the area of the United States where I live, so of course this is going to be different. If you're watching this in a different country, half of this might not even be applicable to you. So just something to bear in mind there. Of course, this is very specific perhaps to my area of the country, but Hoyas across the board, they're becoming so popular, and specifically if you move beyond that realm of Hoya carnosa, Hoya pubicalyx, Hoya retusa, macrophylla, all of the standard Hoyas that you can typically find in most houseplant stores these days, and you move on to, say, this one right here, which is a Hoya Khao. It's not even the most, like, wild Hoya. It's not the most striking. It's interesting, mind you. That's why I ended up purchasing it a while back, but it's probably worth so much more money now. Now, I spent, I think, maybe $40, which still is a lot, mind you, for this full pot of Hoya Khao. Now, I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't been online, but from what I've been seeing from all of the other Hoyas on the market, I wouldn't be surprised if one little cutting of this plant, like if I was just to take this little cutting right here, root it up, and if not me, because I wouldn't do that, but if somebody was to do it and then sell it online, I think this little cutting these days, because this is just a Hoya that is out there, it would cost the same price that I paid for the whole freaking pot. So I'd say that this would probably sell for like $40, and then if people are doing, you know, auctions and stuff as they've been doing on eBay, the prices just keep going up and up. So Hoyas in particular are ones that there are so many varieties of Hoyas, and once, like I said, once you get beyond that realm of pubicalyx, carnosa, and all the other standard ones, the price skyrockets. Websites where I used to see Hoya cuttings sell for like $10, they're now selling for $100, and I think it's absolutely wild. I'm confused what's going on. I worked in the industry, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I'm so confused. But I wanted to point this one out today because I'm lucky that I purchased this Hoya as a full pot, because nowadays I don't think I would be willing to shell out the amount of money it probably costs for something like this. This could be a more common Hoya than I'm aware of. This is just one I picked off the shelf at random to talk about Hoyas today, but I do think it's very relevant, and if you go on eBay or sites where maybe you've been looking for a couple of years, if you've been collecting houseplants for a while, the prices are all up, and they're up a lot, specifically for Hoyas, so it's kind of sad. If I didn't start collecting houseplants years ago, I would not have the collection that I have today. That is a fact, because I'm not wealthy. Like, I've just been doing this for a long time, and I worked at the plant store, so 1 or 2 days a week that I'd be working, I'd bring home a plant or two, and it's just accumulated, and I had a discount at the plant store, of course, and so it's just something I want you guys to bear in mind. I know I have a lot of plants, but I do not have a lot of money. I just want you guys to know that for a fact. I feel like that comes into play perfect with this one right here. So this is a Philodendron gloriosum. Now, this is a large gloriosum. It's very ratty because, you know, it's under my care, but this is a rather large gloriosum for what is available these days. I mean, I'm sure random plant stores have full 10-inch pots and 14-inch pots, but this is a plant that I purchased a couple years ago. I purchased it as a 4-inch pot. I think it was $19, maybe $29. If it wasn't $19, it was $29. I think it was like $19 and I paid shipping on it, and then it was $29. So it was very cheap. It was 2 plants in the pot. They were gorgeous. If you go very far back on my Instagram, I'm sure you can find a photo of it when it was in its young days. But it's grown so much. I propagated from it, and it's grown into this very full plant. And I think that 4-inch pot of gloriosum that I purchased for that inexpensive price these days, I don't think it would be 2 digits. I think it would be at least 3 digits. I feel like you'd be lucky to find a Philodendron gloriosum for less than $100 these days, because it's not one that's mass-produced. Even like the Pink Princess, it's just not out there. I had never gotten Philodendron gloriosums in stock at the plant store where I worked, because if they were they were never readily available, but if they were ever available, they would be in like 14-inch pots, which is huge, and they would be very pricey. So that's not something I was ever willing to bring in to the store, because I just can't see myself charging that much money for something. I'm lucky that I got this plant before the houseplant trend really kicked off, because if it wasn't for that, I really don't think that I would have this plant. So it's gorgeous. It's one that I really do wish was more readily available. It's very, very easy to grow. Of course, you know, it's not, you know, perfect leaves. Some of mine are get kind of, you know, folded on the edges because I don't have the right amount of space to be growing this plant. But it's so incredible. I really wish it was more readily available. Everybody who likes aroids seems to want to grow Philodendron gloriosum. So yeah, it's just kind of a shame that it's another one where the price has really just gone up and up because people know that people want it. But it's gorgeous. I get it. Like, I totally get it. I can't condone it, you know? Okay, I have three more. Oh, we have a lot to talk about today. I've been rambling, so. This is a Philodendron BRANDTIANUM, and you're probably already noticing that I've talked about a couple of philodendrons on this list today, and aroids, or the group that philodendrons are in, have become extremely popular, and that has also caused the prices to skyrocket. So, of course, I'm going to be talking about a lot of these today because there are lots that fall into that category, but when something becomes popular, of course, people are willing to spend more money on it, and this is one right here, Philodendron BRANDTIANUM, that used to sell for very cheap. I was often getting in 4-inch pots at the plant store, and they would cost like, I think $3.50 wholesale. That's the same price as a pothos. I think maximum in the early days, they were like $4.50, maybe $5 if it was a really good batch. And I don't think I ever really sold a BRANDTIANUM for more than $15 at the plant store. That is until 2020 happened, and suddenly everybody seemed to want Philodendron BRANDTIANUM, and it was a plant that for so long I was selling it for like $12 to $15, and they wouldn't fly. Like, I would have them in store for like a week's time because they just weren't moving until suddenly, I don't know what happened. I don't know who posted about them, and suddenly they're going crazy, but everybody wants Philodendron BRANDTIANUM, and the price was starting to go up. I was not able to sell them for $15 anymore. I think it went to like $35 to $40, and I don't know where it's at now because I don't even work at the plant store anymore, but it's just one of those plants that really crept up in pricing, and it's still creeping up, and I feel like I could just take a cutting of this plant. Like, I could take this cutting right here. In fact, I broke off a freaking vine when I was pulling it down for this video. I could, if I wanted to, which I don't want to, I could sell that vine for probably like $60, which I'm not going to do because that's not my style, which, you know, if it is your style, you know, power to you, but I just, you know, would rather just give it to somebody for free. But yeah, this is a really great houseplant. It just really sucks that it's becoming so expensive. This is probably the plant out of all the ones I'm talking about in this video that like the price is like going up scary fast. So like if you want a Philodendron BRANDTIANUM, I probably wouldn't wait much longer because it's probably going to be a long time before the price comes back down. Of course, like we said, I don't dictate the market. I wish I could because I would make everything cheaper, but it's just not the way it works. And this is a very similar one. So this is Philodendron Micans. Mine is extremely ratty. I've had this one for, probably like 4 years at this point, and I've cut it all the way back to the base and regrown it out, so it's gone through a couple cycles of life, and you can see just how much character it has. That's the nice way of putting it. When I purchased this plant, it was $6. I got it in a 4-inch pot. It was a nice full pot. I had no idea what it was. I just thought it looked nice. It was like cool with its dark velvety leaves, and brought it home. Had no idea what it was for a couple of months because I really didn't even know much about houseplants back then. And yeah, the rest is history. And yeah, I'm lucky I purchased this plant when it did because, you know, can you get them for cheap at some places? Probably, if you're lucky, because that's what it used to always cost. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's plant stores out there and a lot of people online who are selling this plant for much more money, because I feel like this is one that people see on Instagram and they really like it and they have to have it, and then they can't find it at their local plant store, so they go online to purchase it, and it just ends up costing a lot more than you would like to pay. So just something to bear in mind there. It's a plant that will grow, of course, very fast. It's like all these philodendrons are very easy to grow, fortunately. So if you are going to shell out the money on them, rest assured, you're going to be able to grow the plant. But like, is it worth it? Like this, like, I don't know. It's hard for me to fathom, you know, spending more than $40 on a Philodendron Micans when I spent $6. It's hard for me to fathom spending over $100 on a pink princess when I spent $8. So I like plants. I love plants. And, you know, if I like a plant, I'll buy it. But it's just something that I kind of am like misunderstanding a little bit, perhaps. And last but not least, we're going to talk about this plant right here. This is a Syngonium. This is another aroid, but it's not quite a philodendron. It's a little different. This is a type of arrowhead vine. Syngoniums, nobody seems to give a rat's ass about. They're called, some people call them Nephitis, or like I said, arrowhead vine. And they're in every houseplant store. When I would buy in a tray of Syngoniums at the plant store, they would not sell. Nobody seemed to care about them, which is a shame because they're wonderful, common houseplants. But this is the one, I feel like, out of all the Syngoniums that people are like, I have to have it. So this is the variegated Syngonium. This is Syngonium PODOPHYLLUM Albo Variegatum. It's absolutely gorgeous. And when I got my hands on this plant, I think it was 18 bucks. So it was not expensive at all for a 4-inch pot. It was a very full 4-inch pot, but my roommate's cat fell in love with this plant very early on and just ruined it down to the nub. So I've grown it out to this just measly couple of pieces of plant since then, but I'm happy about it. It's taken a long time for it to get the way that it is now. So I think it was one vine that I've turned into 3 at this point. So I'm feeling good about that. So give me some kudos. But this, I mean, I don't think it's like as pricey as the Pink Princess Philodendron for a variegated plant, but I don't think that you would spend less than $50 on a plant this size. Probably just one plant, like a cutting of a plant, would probably cost like $50 these days. And I feel like this is one that would probably be like auctioned on eBay a lot. Like, I don't know. You'd be lucky to find this for less than 50 bucks, I would say, which is rude because it's a Syngonium. Like I was saying, like nobody seems to want any other Syngoniums. And suddenly you have a plain green Syngonium and you add a splash of white variegation to it and suddenly it's worth like 10 times the price. But then again, I think that's just how it works with the variegated monstera anyway. So I think that's a good place to wrap up this video. So there are so many other plants out there, specifically aroids, that fall into this list of plants that used to be inexpensive but are now expensive. It's just how trends work, as I've been saying, and like the market works in 2 ways, so or it moves in both ways. So it's just something that we're going to have to deal with as plant enthusiasts. So that's gonna about do it for today's video. Definitely let me know in the comments which plants you are most appalled about the price right now, because there are so many where I just cannot believe it. So thank you guys for watching. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at PhillyFoliage, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day.